In November 1974, he had gone to Cambridge to take the entrance examination in modern languages, but he had not been successful, and the letter confirming this had dropped onto the doormat on Christmas Eve. There had been a huge plus from that brief time in Cambridge, though. He had stayed for 2 nights in the same set of rooms as a fellow examinee from Trowbridge, a lanky, extraordinarily widely read lad named Jimmy Bowden, who, apart from seeking a scholarship in classics, was anxious to convert the university to the self-evident truths of his own brand of neo-Marxism. John had become aware, suddenly, of a world of scholarship, intelligence, imaginative enthusiasm, sensitivity that he had never known before in his comprehensive school at Leicester. On their last afternoon together, Jimmy had taken him to see a double bill from the golden age of the French cinema, and that afternoon he fell in love with a sultry, husky-voiced whore as she crossed her silk-clad legs in some seedy bistro. It was all something to do with the synthesis of style and sexuality, as Jimmy had sought to explain. A few days later, Ashenden had received a postcard from Jimmy, a black-and-white photograph of Marx's tomb in Highgate Cemetery. "The idiots have given me a major skull. Trust you've had your own good news. I enjoyed meeting you and look forward to our first term together. Jimmy." He had never replied to Jimmy, and it was only by chance, 7 years later, that during one of his Oxford tours he'd met a man who'd known Jimmy Bowden. After gaining his preordained first in both parts of the classical tripos, Jimmy had been awarded a junior research fellowship at Oxford, and then, 3 years later, he had died of Hodgkin's disease. He had been buried in Oxford's Holywell Cemetery, amongst many dead, but once preeminent dons. Yet though Jimmy had died, some small part of his legacy lived on for John. John Ashenden had for many years subscribed to several specialist film magazines, printed in the UK and on the continent, for cinema buffs such as he himself had soon become. The next stop was Oxford. "Oxford? Is this Oxford?" Seated on the near-side front seat of the luxury coach, John Ashenden glanced across at the diminutive septuagenarian from California. "Yes, Mrs. Roscoe, this is Oxford." The tour party, 18 women, 9 men, 3 registered husband and wife combinations, sat back in their seats as the coach drove past the sign for City Centre. For some reason, Mrs. Laura Stratton was ill at ease. As agreed, it would be Eddie who would sign the forms and the visitor's book, and then identify the luggage and tip the porter, while she would be lying in a hot herbal bath and resting her weary body, her weary feet. "Gee, I feel so awful, Ed." "Relax, honey. Everything's going to be okay." At 66, 4 years younger than his wife, Eddie Stratton laid his hand briefly on her nylon-clad left foot, the joints of the toes disfigured by years of cruel arthritis. "I'll be fine, Ed. Just once I get in that bath." Immediately behind Ashenden sat a man in his early 70s, a retired civil engineer from Los Angeles, who now looked out of his window at the string of shops and offices in Summertown. It could almost have been back home. But then it was back home, decided Howard Brown. Howard was craning his neck to look across at the keeper's lodge, and as he did so, like Mole, he sensed and smelled his old home territory, and inside him something long dormant woke into sudden life. He felt his eyes welling up with nostalgic tears before fiercely blowing his nose and looking obliquely at his wife Shirley, gratified to observe that her lips were settled into their accustomed crab-crumpet discontent. Presently, the coach pulled in on the left of Beaumont Street, beneath the tall neo-Gothic facade of the Randolph Hotel. "At last!" cried Laura Stratton. Roy, concierge of the 5-star Randolph Hotel, a cheerful, florid-faced man of 60, had been on duty since midday. At 4:25, he was standing at the top of the steps outside the hotel in his yellow-piped blue uniform, beaming semi-beatifically and ready to greet the new arrivals. He enjoyed his work, always had. Seldom did anything much go wrong in an establishment so happily and so predictably well-ordered as the Randolph. Seldom indeed. The duty manager appeared on the coach itself to welcome them all, and to announce that tea, or coffee if preferred, was immediately available in